It's kind of wild, isn't it, how a seemingly random thing can suddenly just be everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I was in a coffee shop earlier, and honestly, it felt like every other person had the exact same, sleek water bottle.
Huh. I know the ones you mean.
It got me thinking, like, beyond just seeing something as popular, what's really driving us? Why do we all jump on these things? And why do some stick around forever while others vanish almost instantly?
That's a fantastic question. It really cuts right to the heart of what makes us tick as, well, social creatures are.
Oh.
And we've got some fascinating insights today. We looked at an article from Post the Highlander and another from the Next Big Idea Club magazine, and they dig into exactly that, the sort of social and psychological forces behind trends.
Exactly. So our goal here for you listening is basically to give you a clear understanding of why trends pop up, what makes some last, and, hopefully offer a few of those aha moments without drowning you in academic jargon.
A shortcut to the good stuff.
Pretty much. So let's start with the basics. Why do we even jump on these bandwagons? That Post the Highlander article talks about trends as these big movements, right? In fashion, lifestyle, experiences.
Yeah, and it says one of the main drivers is just this really fundamental need we all have, the need to uh, fit in, to
Mm.
belong.
Ah, okay. So it's about community.
Exactly. The article suggests that keeping up with trends, having the same interests or, preferences, it fosters a sense of community, camaraderie,
There's like a signal, hey, I get it. I'm part of this group.
precisely. And there's a term for this, right? The bandwagon effect. That's the psychological theory behind it.
Right. I've heard of that. It's where people do things just because lots of other people are doing them.
That's the one. And interestingly, it can sometimes sort of override our own personal beliefs or what we'd normally choose.
Wow. So it's quite powerful.
Very. And there's a biological basis for this too. Investopedia, which the article mentions, points out that humans are basically biologically programmed to be social. We like being part of a group.
Safety in numbers, historically speaking.
You got it. And behaving like the group, adopting its norms,
Hmm.
that leads to acceptance, belonging. So following trends, adopting certain consumer habits, even the way we shop, it satisfies that deep craving.
So it taps into something really fundamental in us. Okay, that makes sense. But the article also mentioned something else. Trends making life simpler, like a shortcut.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
A mental shortcut, or what psychologists call a heuristic.
A heuristic.
Right.
How does that work with trends?
Well, think about it. If you see loads of people using a certain app or wearing a particular style or, I don't know, adopting a specific diet,
Hmm.
your brain kind of assumes it must be the correct or at least a decent decision.
Ah, okay. Like social proof.
Exactly like social proof.
Yeah.
Investopedia puts it nicely. If enough people are following a trend, your brain will assume that it's the correct decision to make. It saves us mental energy. We don't have to research every single option ourselves.
We just sort of outsource the decision to the crowd.
Interesting. Okay, so we need to belong, and trends offer mental shortcuts. Now, the article also mentioned social media and how that's changed the game.
Oh, absolutely. Massively. Social media and the internet have just, well, blown the doors off trend cycles.
How so?
The sheer speed and reach, trends can spread globally almost instantly now.
Hmm.
Psychologs.com notes this shift too, how our social lives have become much more entertainment-centered, often online.
And participating in trends is part of that entertainment.
It's become a major way we communicate and engage online, sharing content, doing the challenges.
Like those TikTok dances everyone was doing.
I-
Or the viral recipes.
Exactly. Those are perfect examples. Or even things like organizing ASMR videos or people unpacking new items online, unboxing.
Right. Unboxing is huge.
These become ways to connect, to feel, up with the times, as the article says.
And people share maybe perceived productivity or new skills they learned from a trend. Yeah. Or sometimes it's about disseminating information and maybe about social causes.
Yeah.
Social media just amplifies everything, the visibility, the perceived importance.
So it's like pouring gasoline on the fire. Trends spread way faster and wider.
Definitely. It's a huge accelerant.
Okay, so that explains the spread. But what about the lifespan? Why do some trends burn out super quickly? That brings us to Flappy Bird. Remember Flappy Bird?
Oh, gosh, yes. What a phenomenon that was. The Next Big Idea Club article uses it as a prime example.
It came out of nowhere, right? Suddenly it was the #1 app everywhere.
Absolutely dominated. The article mentions the creator, Dong Nguyen, was reportedly making something like $50,000 a day. Just staggering.
Insane. And then, poof, it was gone.
Just as suddenly, he pulled it, famously pulled it.
Why did he do that again?
He said it was because it had become an addictive product.
Mm,
which is quite something.
yeah, you don't hear that every day. So that's a really stark example of a trend just ending abruptly.
And this leads into a really interesting concept the article discusses, finite variability.
Finite variability. Okay, what's that?
Think about Flappy Bird. The gameplay, while addictive, was incredibly simple, right? Tap, avoid pipes. Tap, avoid pipes.
Yeah, pretty repetitive.
Exactly. There wasn't much room for new experiences or unpredictable stuff happening within the game itself. The variability was limited. It was finite.
Okay, I see. And the article contrasts this with,
Well, think about another huge trend, maybe a bit earlier, Zynga's Farmville.
oh yeah, Farmville. Everyone is playing that on Facebook, planting virtual crops.
Huge. Nearly 84 million active users at its peak, the article says. And Zynga tried to repeat that success, didn't they? They released all those other Elville games, Cityville, Frontierville.
Right, it felt like there was a new one every few months.
But, as the article points out quite insightfully, they were mostly just, reskins. The core gameplay, the mechanics, they were largely the same.
So the experience became predictable?
Exactly. The novelty wore off because that fundamental variability was still limited. It was still finite, just with a different theme. And what happened? Player interest dropped off. Zynga's stock price, which had been sky high, took a massive hit.
Because the core experience didn't really evolve or surprise people anymore? Finite variability. Got it. So what's the opposite?
Infinite variability. And the article uses a great example, World of Warcraft.
Ah, wow, W. That's been around forever, relatively speaking.
For years. And it's maintained a really dedicated player base. The key difference, the article argues, is that infinite variability.
Where does that come from in Raw W?
A huge part of it is the other players. You're interacting with thousands of real people. You just can't predict what they're going to do, their strategies, how they'll react. As the article puts it, it is the hard-to-predict behavior of other people that keeps the game interesting.
That makes perfect sense. The human element introduces endless unpredictability.
Precisely. And they extend this idea beyond games, too. Think about platforms like YouTube or Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter.
What makes them infinitely variable?
The users. The constant stream of user-generated content. New videos, new posts, new ideas, new arguments. It's always changing, always something novel emerging, because people are constantly creating and interacting.
So while a simple game like Flappy Bird has a defined, sort of limited path, these platforms are constantly evolving because of the people using them.
Exactly. That potential for ongoing surprise and novelty gives them staying power. Infinite variability versus finite.
Okay, let's loop back to Flappy Bird for a second. The creator's reason for pulling it, that it was addictive. That's fascinating.
It really is. It wasn't that people got bored in the usual way. He made a conscious choice based on its impact. Yeah. He's quoted saying, "To solve that problem, it's best to take down Flappy Bird. It's gone forever."
Wow. But did it really go away forever?
Well, not entirely. The article notes the aftermath, right? People were selling phones on eBay that still had the game installed for crazy prices.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And tons of clones popped up almost immediately.
Yeah.
It just shows how hard it is to actually control a trend or a cultural phenomenon once it takes off. You can't just easily put the genie back in the bottle.
True. But ultimately, the game itself, that finite variability, it probably meant its days were numbered anyway, right? Even if he hadn't pulled it.
Very likely. Players would have eventually moved on to experiences that offered more depth, more evolution, more surprise.
Okay, this is starting to paint a really clear picture.
So yeah, to kind of bring it all together, what we've seen is that the forces behind trends are pretty layered, aren't they?
Definitely. There's that fundamental human thing, the need to belong, which makes the bandwagon effect so strong.
Right. Then there's the practical side trends, acting as those mental shortcuts, the heuristics, simplifying our choices.
And then social media acting as this massive amplifier, just speeding everything up and making trends so visible.
Exactly. And then when we look at why some last and others fade, this idea of variability seems crucial.
Finite versus infinite, the predictable versus the unpredictable.
Yeah. Trends where the experience is limited, like Flappy Bird or maybe even those early Zynga games, they tend to burn out faster. Finite variability.
Whereas things with infinite variability, often driven by unpredictable human interaction or constantly changing content, like WoW W or social platforms, they have a much better shot at lasting longer.
Exactly. Understanding these forces, the psychology and the structure behind it all, it can give you a whole new lens for looking at the trends you see every day, even the ones you participate in yourself.
It really does. So here's maybe a final thought to chew on for everyone listening. How is this constant back and forth, this interplay between our deep social needs and the way digital experiences are designed? How is that actually shaping the trends that grab our attention right now?
Hmm, that's a big question.
And maybe more importantly, what are the long-term effects on us, on our behavior, and maybe even on society as a whole? Something to think about.